Have you ever noticed how the room grows colder when you stop chasing? You used to bend yourself in 1,000 ways to make them comfortable. You'd laugh too quickly, say yes too easily, stay too long in places you outgrew. You thought being needed meant being loved. But then something shifted. You started whispering no. You took your energy back. You stopped explaining your silence. And suddenly, they pulled away. They stopped calling. They talked about you in half sentences filled with confusion and contempt. You wonder, was my love only valuable when it came wrapped in sacrifice? Why do they turn away when you begin turning inward? Because your light, once dimmed to fit their comfort, now burns with clarity. And clarity is painful for those still living in the fog. When you start loving yourself, you break an unspoken contract. I will abandon myself to stay connected to you. The moment you rewrite that agreement, people feel betrayed, not because you hurt them, but because you stopped letting them hurt you. Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." And when your why becomes your own well-being, those who thrived on your self-neglect will revolt. Your growth exposes their stagnation. Your boundaries offend their entitlement. You're not the one who changed. You just stopped shrinking. But society does not applaud self-loyalty. It prefers compliance. It romanticizes selflessness, but only when it serves others. A woman who sacrifices is called virtuous. A man who says no is called selfish. They were comfortable when your love came with apologies, with waiting, with self-erasure. But when you begin to stand, tall, unashamed, rooted, they no longer recognize you, and so they ignore you. But silence is never neutral. Their distance is a weapon. They hope your solitude will break you, that you'll come crawling back into your old shape, that you'll miss their noise so much. You'll abandon your newfound peace. But the truth is, your healing threatens everything built on your brokenness. You stopped performing. You stopped explaining your worth. You became inconvenient. And so they leave. Let them. Love that survives only when you're small is not love. It is control in disguise. And the moment you choose yourself, you will be called cold, arrogant, distant. Let them call you what they need to justify their absence. Your task is not to stay lovable in their narrative. Your task is to stay loyal to your own becoming. Because in loving yourself, you're not losing people. You're losing roles you played to be accepted. And the silence they leave behind, that's not emptiness. It's space. Space for truth. Space for those who won't flinch when you rise. And if they ignore you when you begin to love yourself, remember this. Their silence is the sound of your liberation. What if peace isn't loud? What if healing feels like losing everything? There comes a moment when the noise fades and you're left with only yourself. The phone stops lighting up. Invitations dwindle. You sit in your quiet apartment with a cup of tea and no one to perform for. At first, it feels like freedom. Then, strangely, it feels like grief. You've removed the chaos. You've drawn the line. You've said no and meant it. Do you ever feel like someone finally sees the part of you you've always hidden? Here, you don't have to hide anymore. You're safe now. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel so we can keep walking this path together. Thank you. But now, in the absence of everything that once distracted you, there is silence. And inside that silence, echoes, doubts, loneliness that lingers like a shadow at dusk. You start to ask, is this peace, or am I just alone? There is a hidden pain in healing they don't talk about, the mourning. You grieve the person you were when you were still chasing. You You grieve the identity that existed only in relation to being needed, wanted, depended on. It's not that you want to go back. It's that your nervous system was wired for survival, not stillness. And now that the chaos is gone, your body doesn't know how to rest. You reach for old habits like an addict reaching for a lighter. Loneliness doesn't mean you made the wrong choice. It means you're detoxing from your own abandonment. Nietzsche said, "Invisible threads are the strongest ties. When you cut those threads made of guilt, of people-pleasing, of staying small so others feel big, you will feel the snap. That snap is not failure. That snap is your return." Most people think healing will feel like sunlight. Sometimes it does, but often it feels like being lost in a forest with no map, only a faint sense that your footsteps are finally yours. You will want to reach out. You will want to apologize for growing, for choosing peace over performance, for choosing solitude over submission. But that desire is your old self clinging to the rules of a game you no longer play. You're not alone. You're rebuilding. And rebuilding takes time. It takes discomfort. It takes sitting through nights where no one calls, and mornings where you wonder if this version of you is lovable. It is. But love must begin with your own gaze, your own voice saying, "I'm still here. I haven't abandoned you." Because peace isn't the absence of pain, it's the presence of you. So when the silence grows heavy, don't run, don't fill it, don't numb it, sit with it. Let the grief surface. Let the ache speak. Let yourself feel the cost of becoming. You are not empty. You are clearing space. You are not alone. You are returning to your center. There will come a day when you will sit in that same quiet room, and it won't feel like loneliness. It will feel like truth. And that's how you'll know. The peace is real. The loneliness was just the echo of who you used to be, begging you not to leave. Leave anyway. There's a certain sting in watching people move on from you, like you were just a temporary station. They once called you their home, their safe space, their everything. And now, you see their smile elsewhere. You hear their laughter in someone else's story. You find the words they once said to you, now handed out like candy to strangers. You stand still, holding all the versions of yourself you gave to them, and all they've left behind is a silence that screams, "You were replaceable." But maybe what hurts isn't that they left. It's that they didn't even hesitate. Being replaced is one of the deepest wounds the ego can feel, because it strikes at the core of a belief many of us carry. If I'm good enough, they'll stay. And when they don't, we begin bargaining with ghosts. You replay every word, every smile, every fight, wondering if you were too much or not enough. But the truth is, sometimes people leave not because of who you are, but because of what they're unwilling to face within themselves. You became a mirror, a reflection, a disruption in their illusion. And it's easier to find someone who doesn't make them feel so exposed. Nietzsche said, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe." When you step outside the tribe, when you grow, when you love yourself, you become inconvenient. And people will flee rather than face what your evolution reveals in their stagnation. You are not replaceable. What they're chasing now is convenience, easier versions, quieter mirrors. And even then, they will eventually realize the echo of you cannot be replaced with noise. You don't need to be chosen to be worthy. You don't need to be kept to be enough. This is where you begin again, not by begging to be seen, but by choosing to see yourself. Because the wound of being replaced is not about them. It's about what part of you still seeks external validation as proof of existence. And when that part dissolves, What's left is someone who no longer asks, "Why didn't they choose me?" but instead says, "I choose me now." Let them move on. Let them rewrite the story. Let them forget the chapters where you bled just to keep their world warm. You are not their comfort. You are not their closure. You are your own home now. And the day you stop needing to be chosen is the day you finally arrive. Whole, unshakable, enough. The pain of being replaced will fade. But the strength you gain from not chasing, that stays. Let them go. You're not where they left you. You've moved on too. There's a storm you've swallowed for years. It started as a tremble, a moment of discomfort you were taught to ignore, a wince you buried beneath a smile. You were told not to raise your voice, not to speak unless spoken to, not to make things worse. So you didn't. You became good. You became quiet. But silence has a cost. Every unspoken truth, every swallowed pain builds pressure. And now, there's fire behind your ribs. Rage you can no longer keep gentle. A scream that tastes like freedom. You're not angry because you're broken. You're angry because you're finally awake. Anger is not a flaw. It is a compass. It points to what's been crossed, to boundaries that were never honored, to moments you were touched without consent, dismissed without reason, left without closure. And when you rise, voice trembling but steady, people will say you've changed. No, you remembered. The world teaches you to fear your anger because they fear the power of someone who's no longer suppressing. But Nietzsche said, "He who cannot command himself should obey." Your anger is not your enemy. It is your inner commander rising. They said, "You're too sensitive." What they meant was, "Your truth is too loud for our comfort." But now, you no longer mute yourself to keep the peace, because peace that costs your voice is not peace. It's prison. You are not crazy. You are clear. You are not bitter, you are brave. Your anger is the part of you that still believes in justice, still believes you deserved better. And you did, and you do. Let it move you. Let it shake the walls you once tiptoed around. Let it remind you, what happened was not okay. And pretending it was only deepened the wound. You no longer have to perform politeness to be safe. Your safety now lives inside your spine, inside your no, inside your refusal to carry what was never yours. There will be days when the rage surprises you, when tears come with the scream, when you don't recognize the version of you who fights back. Good. That version is the one who survived, the one who woke up when silence became unbearable. You are not here to be agreeable. You are here to be whole, and wholeness includes the fire. Don't shame your anger. Don't shrink it. Don't dress it up in softer language. Let it speak. Let it roar. It's not here to destroy. It's here to cleanse. Because the truest healing isn't quiet. It's raw. It's ugly. It burns through illusion until only truth remains. And in that truth, you will find not just pain, but power. You're not angry because you're weak. You're angry because you were silent too long. Now, speak. There comes a day when you stop explaining. You stop reaching for understanding in faces that never intended to hold you. You stop performing your pain in hopes that someone might finally say, "I get it." Because you've learned that some people don't want to understand. They want comfort, not truth. Familiarity, not growth. So you pull back, not out of spite, but out of clarity. You realize you don't need to be understood to be real. You don't need to be forgiven to be whole. You don't need their permission to exist fully. You stop begging for healing in hands that broke you. We were taught to believe closure came from outside, that we needed someone to say sorry, that peace meant everything made sense. But that is a myth. Sometimes closure is choosing not to reopen the wound again. It is the quiet, terrifying act of saying, "This chapter ends with me." You will wait years for someone to acknowledge what they did. And in that waiting, you will wither. Because no apology can replace the healing that only self-return brings. Nietzsche wrote, "No price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself." And owning yourself means not outsourcing your worth, not tying your becoming to someone else's guilt. Let them misunderstand you. Let them call you distant, ungrateful, cold. You are not here to fit the version of you they created. You are here to become the version of you that waited silently beneath years of pretending. When you no longer need their understanding, you reclaim your voice. When you stop waiting for them to care, you learn to care for the parts they neglected. It's a brutal freedom. Because letting go of needing to be understood also means letting go of the fantasy that they ever could, that they were capable, that they were willing. It hurts, but it also liberates. Because in the end, what you wanted wasn't their understanding. It was your own permission. And now you have it. You no longer need to justify your departure. You no longer need to earn your boundaries. You no longer need to make yourself palatable to stay loved. Love that requires you to shrink is not love. It's convenience. You are inconvenient now. You are real, and nothing is more dangerous to illusion than someone who no longer plays along. You don't need to be understood. You need to be whole. And wholeness at last is yours. This is not the version of you that bends. This is not the version that over-explains. This is the version that breathes without permission, that stands where it once knelt, that laughs without checking who's watching. You've stopped trying to be loved the way others understand love. Now you love in your own language. And that language, it speaks in silence, in space, in peace that doesn't apologize. You are no longer a translation of someone else's comfort. You are the original text. They may never understand. Let them go. You do not need to be understood. You only need to be free. And you are.